This room has no windows, and it's 61 degrees.
Okay, so my sewing room is more than a little messy, but the first step is to find your fabric. And here we have me holding up my mask fabric to my face.
This box says patterns, which really annoys me because I always think that it's the sewing patterns, but no, it's just fabric that has patterns.
This is the fabric I chose. The next step is to make sure that your fabric doesn't
clash with your skin.
I think it works.
So I actually had no idea what I was doing, so I watched a tutorial on YouTube. Then I had a problem. I couldn't find my
Measuring thingy.
so I used a ruler. If your ironing board is as messy as mine, clean it off so that you have a nice surface to work on. Now listen up, my fine Phantom of the Opera wannabes. You're going to need a piece of fabric that is 7 by 9, preferably cotton, but you can use other materials if you want to dye. I needed to find a lining because I hadn't thought of that before, so I found a nice piece of white fabric. Because I'm so terrible at cutting in straight lines, I trimmed my mask to make sure it was symmetrical. Now, I don't usually iron fabrics, but I decided I probably should because I felt like it, I guess. Now use your patterned piece as a pattern to cut out your lining.
So I didn't really pay attention that much, but I'm assuming the next logical step is sewing.
It turns out the next logical step was sewing. So I sewed down the 2 longer sides, so that would be the 9-inch sides, together. An important thing to note is unless you want your insides to become your outsides, you should probably leave a little gap in the seam so that you can turn it inside out. Or I guess I mean right side out? I don't really know, never mind. Now at this point, I just sat there and contemplated for a really long time, but it turns out the next logical step would be to complete sewing around the edges, but that is not what I did. Instead, I went back to my ironing board and in the process,
Oh hey, I found my measuring thingy.
it was stuck underneath the laundry basket, but the good thing is that I found it. At this point in the tutorial, the lady put the elastic in her mask. However, she was making a reversible mask, and I am not that advanced. So, after contemplating much and deciding how long to make my elastic, I went back and sewed around the remaining edges. For some reason, I did not film this part in time-lapse, so now you guys get to watch me sew really fast. It kind of looks like I'm trying to run away from a bad guy in a horror movie, but I have to quick finish sewing something first. Oh yeah, and another important thing is to trim off all your strings. Another thing I'm really bad at. The next step is to reverse your mask through that tiny little hole that I made, which was quite a frustrating experience, but kind of fun to watch in time-lapse, to be honest. Oh, and also straighten out your corners. The next step is to go back to your ironing board and iron out that little fledgling mask. And if you're bad at ironing or just too lazy for it, then you can just skip this step if you want. And at this point, I was a little befuddled because I didn't really know what to do with that little hole. So back to the sewing machine I went and folded over the mask again and made another seam. And then it was kind of thick, so the thread broke and I had to and here's me trying to thread a needle. I'm kind of really bad at it, but anyway. Anyway, the point is that eventually I got it and I was able to fix that little hole. But then I had a little problem. In case you missed that, I said, I'm not really sure what to do next. And so I did what any normal sewer would do. I sewed. I was pleating. Oh, I pleated the mask then. Pleat your mask. And if you don't know what pleating is, then pleating is just fancy wrinkles with purpose. Those fancy little wrinkles made my square piece of fabric start to look like a mask a little bit. So I tried it on my face and was quite displeased, actually.
Looks kind of big.
And what does a seamstress do with something too big? Hems it, of course. My happy little Phantom of the Opera wannabes, our mask is nearly complete. The last step is to put your elastic onto your mask. And if you're like me and gave up with the sewing machine, you can sew it by hand if you want. But that's just what I did. Whenever I sew anything, it seems like nothing ever works out. So I was feeling a little pessimistic, and so I didn't knot off my last piece of elastic. But anyway, I tried it on, and surprisingly, it actually mostly fit. Well, it fit. After adjusting it a little bit, it was a little apparent that taking it in was not really necessary. However, I did have one problem. At this point, I was actually quite proud of myself for pulling this off, but also felt like a little bit of a monster and was not looking forward to wearing this to work. The reason why I say I look like a monster is because I feel like I look like... Sorry if that's too scary for you, Mom. Oh yeah, most important rule of sewing. Never forget to unplug your iron. Seriously, don't forget that. The last step to this process, of course, is trying it on again and taking a bunch of selfies in the bathroom. Oh yes, Sewing Rose has a little message for you all.
I feel like I look terrifying. I can't breathe. I'm really hot. And I feel like I made it too big. Thanks for watching.
That is all for today, and now I'm the Phantom of the Opera, apparently.